Greetings and welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad you're listening, and if you like this podcast, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. That really helps us go up in the rankings, and the more of y'all that do it, the better this podcast is going to get out there, and the importance of these teachings is going to get out there. And today I would like to talk about something very, very interesting, both drawing from what Bardon says in Initiation into Hermetics and from my own experience with phantoms and ghosts. And to start out, I will say that I agree with what Bardon says in Initiation into Hermetics, which is these ghosts or apparent ghosts are not really the actual person, him or herself, that are attached to these places. They're more of kind of an after image. The actual person has moved into the astral plane and is in the astral plane, not actually in the place that is haunted. And that matches up well with my experience. And to illustrate that, I'll basically just kind of get right into my one experience with ghosts. And it was about 3 years ago from now when I was living in downtown San Antonio, Texas. And I'm not going to reveal the place exactly, but it was downtown, and it was a kind of high-rise building. And I started experiencing these strange things and seeing these kinds of black images, or phantom images coming through in my apartment. And then I would end up going to sleep and feeling taps on the shoulder, sometimes things sprinkled on me. And, my immediate instinct, which proved to be right, was to banish them, because I just didn't really want ghosts in my studio on the 6th floor. And so I basically just banished them, in the beginning. And I did it in a very simple way, just strong force, strong willpower. I said, I command you to leave in the name of God Almighty, in the name of Jesus Christ. And I held a cross when I did it. And I said, I command you to leave and leave my apartment alone. This is my space. And it worked instantly, and they cleared out. The problem is I would get lazy about doing that. And then basically in a month, they would kind of return. And then I would do the, kind of banishing ritual all over again. It would clear my apartment out. And so I just kind of got lazy, and I didn't really sense they were dangerous ghosts. They were just kind of hanging around as if they were lost, probably just an after image wandering and attached to the place because people fed them. And I didn't say anything to anyone about any of this. I just waited to see if some of the neighbors I talked to would speak up. And pretty soon I had some neighbors speak up. I had one that, knew I had moved in fairly recently, and he said, so have you encountered the ghost yet? And I was like, okay, that's good to hear. Yes, I have. What's your experience? And his experience was very similar, that they were friendly and just kind of wandering around lost and nothing big to fear. And, he didn't actually do anything to banish them. He just kind of accepted them as kind of part of the deal. But he wasn't worried about it. He wasn't worried about it, which is a good thing, because worrying about it can feed the phantoms and get them hanging around. That's that's what keeps all these ghosts and things you see on Netflix and stories you see about haunted houses is the ghost, basically just kind of takes over the will of the human being and attaches itself to a place. And the human gets so scared that they just end up feeding the ghost more and more. And the ghost just kind of dominates the space. And pretty soon it gets out of control with these poltergeist phenomenons and these just crazy things happening because it's been fed by human power that got freaked out and just taken over. And then they need an exorcist, a ghost exorcist, to come in, and it uses all the ghost exorcist resources to banish them because that's been fed for so long to stay around. And, I'm certainly not signing up for that job, so don't be contacting me to come banish ghost places, but I do take care of myself, and I really only had this one experience. So we're back in San Antonio about 3 years ago. And this one neighbor comes to me and tells the story that he's not really worried about them and just accepts them. And so I kind of admit to him, like, yeah, I have noticed the kind of similar phenomenon myself. And then there was this one very problematic case. And it was a guy that lived across the hall from me. And he was kind of, I almost feel like I'm disclosing too much, but I'm not disclosing anybody's names, so I'm probably okay. But he was basically a maintenance heroin user. He used enough heroin to kind of keep him going and keep him working. But that heroin addiction, even if it was a maintenance kind of thing, to just keep him at the right level so he didn't go through withdrawals. And even if that was the case, that would make his will very weak, succumb to an addiction, and the ghosts were just absolutely dominating him. And I finally had him over to my place, and he got in there. And we hung out a bit and started hanging out more. And he said, yeah, your place is clear. Your place is completely clear and translucent. There's no hauntings here. And he was just really impressed and struck by the energy of my apartment. Like, it was just a huge change from getting out of his. And so he was having a real rough time with the ghost. And I think it was basically because of his addiction that was opening him up and feeding this phantom image to hang out in his place more and more. And he was having furniture moved and all sorts of stuff relocated and just, getting completely dominated. And I told him what I did, and I told him how I cleared it, and I just ended up keeping it clear. And he was really impressed with that and loved coming over ever since that. He was like kind of insecure, so he didn't really want to bother me, but I enjoyed spending time with him because he was very much in this kind of spiritual frightened state where everything was like energy and everything was like possession. And he actually felt possessed. And, I didn't feel the need to cleanse the apartment after he left. It was still fine. My apartment. But he was really going down a bad track and having flashbacks of trauma in the past. And it was all weakening him and making him prey to the ghosts and phantoms, as well as a lot of psychological trauma that he wasn't really addressing in therapy or any practices. And so yeah, I just think he got dominated by them, and that's basically what happened. And I kept the energy clear, and then there was, it's just kind of this thing that most people don't want to talk about. And then when I finally ended up leaving that apartment, because there were other issues, I didn't like being downtown. It was too noisy. And, there were some other issues. So I decided to move to the nice part of town where it was quieter and calmer and, more away from the hubbub of downtown. And on the, at the very end, when I was kind of moving my stuff out, the next door neighbor talked to me. And we had never really talked the whole time I'd been there. And then we started talking more and more when I was moving out. And she told me about her experiences with the ghost. And she was actually a tarot reader and felt that that helped her. But she was having she was actually, I got the sense she had a lot of stress in her life. She had a kid and I think an ex, the baby's daddy, I guess you'd call it, that was, very, very difficult to deal with, and working a lot and trying to take care of her baby at the same time in a place that probably wasn't really conducive to having a child. And so she was basically saying the ghosts were basically the baby or the young kid. I can't really remember how old this kid was, but old enough to speak. So maybe we're talking like 4 or something. I'm calling him a baby. He might have been more like 4. But she would basically say he sees stuff, and he tells me when he sees stuff, and she tried to do banishing things, but it didn't really seem to be working for her. I mean, the ghost kind of kept coming back and terrorizing her. And, I told her, I shared with her, what I did with it and how I kept my room clear, and empathized with her and her situation. And then you have, a toddler who is actually, in a sense, as a young child, and in that still kind of feeling everything fully stage, probably the best thing you've got going as a guardian. But he was noticing and saying, Mom, do you see this? Do you see that? Do you see that? And it was making her real worried, but she did her own practices with it, but still didn't seem to completely go away. I mean, I think that the confusion about what the phantom is really gets people, and they think it's the actual person hanging around when really it's just a phantom astral image, or phantom after image rather. And the actual person has moved into the astral plane, into the other dimension, which can be located in the Akasha, and that's where you would find the actual person. So this apparent ghost is really just a phantom that, is an after image, but it can be fed by humans giving it too much power and being vulnerable, and basically, getting it attached to one place. And I feel like that had happened enough in that building, because this building had a lot of people that were real stressed out. I mean, for a high rise downtown, it was pretty cheap rent. And so it had a lot of people that were real stressed out. And I think they ended up, these phantom images just ended up preying and getting fed by humans. So they attached themselves more and more and more to that building. and it used to be a hotel, which could startle people. So, it would end up just being attached more and more and more. And, my across the hall neighbor, the heroin maintenance user, even looked up on the internet the history and what grounds this was built on. And he found like a house that looked scary, that it was a house before it was a hotel. And, going through the history because he loved local history, but, at the same time, going through that scared him more and more as if he needed supportive evidence. And I think it did nothing really but frighten him more of these phantoms and feed the phantoms more. And he was in a very disoriented space, but he was a sensitive soul enough that he was feeling vibrations all the time and could feel the clear vibrations in my apartment and loved to go there to hang out because it was good energy, and was really almost kind of impressed by me and taking me as kind of a, putting me on a little bit of a pedestal where I probably didn't really deserve to be, but, anyways, that was the deal with that. So, I guess the lesson is in Bardon, and I think it's kind of halfway through the steps in initiation into Hermetics, it just talks about these phantoms and these ghosts that get fed by humans and vulnerable humans and frightened humans and attach themselves to one place. But, and it's like my command of them leaving in the name of God and Jesus Christ. And, that works fine. It also, like, what it calls to mind is a Tony Robbins talk I listened to one time where he was talking about his early days doing sales for another coach and basically, doing affirmations that were pretty much in line with Bardon's auto-suggestion of saying them in the present tense as if you are already there. And Tony Robbins would say, I am unstoppable, I am unstoppable, I am unstoppable. And, he would say that repeatedly, like 300 times in the car ride driving to work. And he would say, I command infinity to give me sales today. I command all of infinity to give me sales. And some people would look at that like, you can't command infinity, but it worked for him, and he was after making money, which is, his right for sure. And, it worked. He was unstoppable and commanded infinity in the present tense. And, pretty much, right out of the textbook of Bardon, it almost what makes me wonder, sometimes like that kind of movement that Tony Robbins comes out of and some of the NLP stuff that came out, it kind of almost makes me wonder if they borrowed it some way from Bardon. I almost think like Bardon's stuff gets to the core issues so much that it's almost like I begin to see the more I work with Bardon's stuff, I begin to see like a lot of psychology and a lot of these self-help methods as originating from Bardon himself. I don't know if they actually read Bardon, but I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, Bardon's book hadn't really taken off in popularity in the U.S. at that time, I don't believe. Luckily it has now, and we have it at our disposal. And I'm so glad we do, and it's easy to order from Amazon. And if I ever remember, I'll put a link below to buy it on Amazon. But, yeah, this is good stuff. And for me, it was very comforting that my experience matched up with Bardon's, and the ghosts were easy to dispel from my place. That said, I don't want to have to do it again. I don't want to live in any other haunted places. Right now, I live, in areas with good energy. So, and I have a support system of good energy and strong people. And so, that kind of rubs off on me because I am impressionable like everyone, to get into Tony Robbins again. And by the way, I certainly understand if some people don't like Tony Robbins. He's not for everyone. But, I have heard him say you are the 5 people that you hang around the most, So if you're hanging around a bunch of, really sick people, then it's going to rub off on you and you're going to be sick. But if you hang around a lot of really strong people, then that's going to rub off on you and you're going to become that too. So I think that's good advice to keep in mind all the time, because these are uncertain times we're living in, and there's a lot of people that are very weak. And so, yeah. And other than that, I am available as executive spiritual coach to offer coaching for anyone working through Bardon, any students of Bardon or practitioners of Bardon that need help with the exercise and other recommendations. I certainly believe in the subjective factor of what Bardon suggests. Each individual is different and is going to find different ways to go about this, and it depends on their particular temperament. He stresses that a lot in Initiation into Hermetics. I think that's important because Bardon does not like dogma. And likewise, I don't think it's a good idea to turn Bardon into dogma, become a Bardon fundamentalist. He himself wouldn't want that. You need to honor your own unique self in your own unique way of going about the Bardon exercises, rather than becoming a Bardon dogmatist where it's like, okay, he doesn't like religious dogma, that's great, but I'll turn Bardon himself into just dogma that I have to follow play by play, I think that's just recreating the same kind of thing, really. I mean, so that's not a good idea. So I can offer a lot of things I've learned about going through Bardon that may not be a Bardon fundamentalist, So that's another thing to watch out for with the Bardon videos. And I do think the top practitioners and teachers of Bardon in the field are very good. I feel real good about Martin Fox. I feel good about Sifu Mark Rasmus. Those are the main 2 I see coming up. I know others have done particular podcasts and their videos have gotten viral, but those 2 I feel pretty solid about. My love and support goes out to them. And yeah, so that's this episode. Not very long, but hopefully it's helpful. And definitely contact me if you want some regular coaching of some kind. And I am available, and I'm available to talk to you freely on a free exploratory call. If possible. It's not a hard sales pitch. I want it to be a good fit for all parties involved. So peace and many blessings to all as we go through some uncertain times in our world and our economics, and just blessings to each and every one of you. And thanks for listening.